Welcome to the Hazard Class Podcast. This is the podcast where I ask my stupid questions of some of the smartest people in and around the world of emergency services. Our guest this week started his fire service journey as a volunteer firefighter on Long Island back in 2008 while still a junior in high school. He served at 2 departments since then, working as a fire officer on both. He was a member of the Township Tech Rescue Team and served on a training committee for the most recent department. He's the creator and co-host of the Volley House podcast, one of the founders of Command Media Network, and soon to be my co-host on a new podcast we're calling the Out of Service Podcast. I'm sure we'll explain a lot more about that when we chat with my guest, Tyler DeLuca. Yo, dog.
Yo.
What's up?
Nothing much, man.
Welcome.
Glad to be on here.
Yeah, man. I'm happy to have you. So as we kind of teased out, we'll maybe tease this out a little bit here, jump, and then we'll get back into some of your story as to why we get here, right? So the big announcement, right? Me and Tyler are starting a new podcast, Out of Service, we're calling it. And so it's going to be kind of, how would you describe it?
I would describe it as what people actually talk about in the firehouse, aside from just your normal tactics and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I would say it's got a fun, humorous twist to it. And some funny segments. I'm amped.
Yeah, me too. I'm super excited for it. It really is like the name kind of says it all, I think, as we came up with that Out of Service podcast. It's like, well, what do we do when we're not talking about firefighting or going on runs? Or it's like, there's a lot of time to kill. And, whether it's having stupid conversations or, theorizing about, improbable events or whatever it might be. We talked about it and we were like, how do we do this? And we kind of theorized some ways to like segment that out. We're excited about it. And it's going to be, for those listening on the 13th of May, we're literally filming this in the morning. This is going to come out at 11 o'clock or something. And what's literally happening this morning. But so probably a week or two, we'll have the first episode out. So check it out. So Tyler, let's go back. That's a little bit of tease of kind of what we have coming down the pipeline, but let's go back. The classic question, right? Tell me about your childhood. Why did you decide to do firefighting, in the first place?
So I would say, and I've talked about this on my show before, I feel like I don't have the standard how I joined the fire service type story. Mine actually started as a joke. So
wouldn't it be a hoot to be a firefighter?
So what happened was me and my friends, we'd always be hanging out in the woods and whatnot. And, when we were teenagers.
Wait, stop. We're going to take a quick pause on that. We're not just going to breeze over the idea that you casually mentioned that you and your friends just hung out in the woods. That's a normal thing. Is this what people in New York do?
Oh yeah, by me for sure. We were always in the woods, always causing trouble, lighting fires. So
sorry for interrupting, but I couldn't just let that statement go by. Hanging in the woods, doing hood rat shit.
Yeah, I mean, we used to hang out with a crackhead named Oreo. I swear to God. And he was way older than us. He was probably in his 40s at the time. And we were like, I don't know, 14, 15 years old. Super sketchy. And he was so entertaining. And he was just like, we had this sandpit area that we used to hang out in all the time. And this dude would show up. And I remember I would tell my dad, I'm going to hang out, with a bunch of my friends. Oh, who you hanging out with? And I would start rattling off my friends' names. Then I would say Oreo. And he's like, who's Oreo? I was like, oh, some crackhead. And I think my dad thought I was just fucking around. So he's like, all right, whatever. But no, it was legitimately this homeless crackhead that we used to hang out with in this sandpit area. And he used to buy his beer and shit like that. It was crazy. But
he sounds a good guy.
Yeah, great dude. He's still around. My friend actually sees him. He works at like I don't know if he works there or he just harasses people, but at a Stop and Shop over by the town I grew up in. So yeah, we would hang out.
He's gotta be old now. Old.
Yeah. He's got to be probably in his late 50s now.
Oh,
probably still doing
not
the
that
same
old.
thing.
But yeah, man, crazy.
Yeah. So at that time, around like age 14 or 15, my friend's uncle would pick us up and we'd go clean offices and we'd make like $10 per office. That was like my first like job that I had. And his uncle, one time we were heading back from a job and he was like, what do you guys do? Like, what are you doing with your lives? Like, all you do is hang out in the woods and cause trouble and stuff like that. And we happened to be driving past the firehouse at the time. And my friend Andrew was like panicked. He's like, I'm going to join the fire department. And his uncle was like, what about you, Tyler? And I'm like, I'll join the fucking fire department too. So he said, I'll believe it when I see it. And we're so hot-headed. We're like, we're going to join the fire department just to show your uncle that he's a dick. And we were too young at the time, but we heard some chatter about a juniors program. And our high school backed up to the firehouse. So we would leave school, we'd walk across the field, and there was like a gate. You get into the back of the firehouse. We'd always knock on the door. When are you starting the junior program? When are you starting the junior program? And then finally they started it and we joined. And it was when they started explaining like how it was, they were going to like, oh, we're going to go on field trips and blah, blah. I had to go down there with my dad, and like everyone had to have their parent there. And I remember my dad raising his hand and he goes, hey, I don't mean to be a hump here. He's like, I think my son came here to learn how to be a firefighter. I'm like, oh yeah, we'll get into that. So we started getting into some of the junior stuff, and I was only in it for maybe about 2 months before I turned 17. And at the time, you were allowed to join the fire department at 17 years old. And there was like certain things, like when we were hanging out, like we would see the fire department either responding to a call or one particular one, we were hanging out at this pizza place. There was a car accident and we saw the fire department show up and kind of watch what they were doing. And we were like, this is kind of cool. And, you know, I got into the fire department. My friend Andrew, I guess a couple months later, joined the fire department, and he wound up going to FDNY.
Oh, cool.
You know, out of that. And we fell in love with it. We were like just the people there, and, you know, everyone from the senior man all the way down to like, you know, me being the youngest guy, like everyone was just like super cool. And yeah, the rest is history. That's pretty much my story of getting into the fire department.
So as you start actually going on runs and whatnot, like when I think you said that you liked it a lot, but did you remember having a specific moment where you're like, oh, cool, this is like more than a joke. Like it's like, you know, I got into this under strange circumstances, but wow, I really like this. Did you have a moment that you kind of had that unlock, or kind of, you know?
I would say that when I first really started hanging out down there as like a junior, and we'd be there doing like a training, like a junior's drill or whatever, and the tones went off, and just watching the guys come down, respond, get their gear on, the trucks go out, there was something so cool about that. And I was like, oh, this is kind of like a adrenaline rush. Now, the really interesting part is at the time, like I had like this weird kind of anxiety, and I guess it developed when I was in like middle school and kind of went away as I got a little bit older. But the first call I ever went on with the fire department, my first run ever, was a reported structure fire, residential structure fire. And I was on the first engine out. And I remember just sitting in the seat, the lights were on, we take off, and I started feeling like that panic, like, oh shit, like, is this really kind of what I want to do? And wound up being an oil burner puffback. And my job, they got off, I had to flush the hydrant or whatever. And really it was after that my anxiety went away. It was like a exposure therapy almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just that whole rush of getting on the truck, and the other part of it, you know, as cliche as this might sound, being able to help people. You know, I think that most people, you know, at their core, want to help others. You know, there's some, I mean, real idiots out there though, you know, don't get me wrong, people that, you know, I don't care about that person, but there's just something about that. And it's like, you combine the two, you could help people and get like your adrenaline fix at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was like the moment.
Would you play sports? You grew up playing sports and stuff?
Yeah, I grew up playing lacrosse.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I did like 1 year of football. I wrestled here and there. When I got into
just with your friends,
yeah, wrestling in the woods, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
it's a more casual thing, really.
Yeah, no, for sure. When I got into high school, though, when I joined the fire department, like I was thinking about, like, you know, I want to get on the lacrosse team, and then when I joined the fire department, I was like, I like this way too much and I wouldn't be able to balance that. So I just stuck with the fire department.
Yeah. The reason I ask is that oftentimes people that kind of serendipitously find their way into the fire service and end up liking a lot, have some sort of sports or team aspect that as soon as they fall into the fire service, they're like, oh, this is like a team sport forever, right? It's like that same locker room vibe, having fun, hanging with the boys, right? And like, but then you also get to go do and accomplish these goals and you know, for lack of a better term, missions or whatever the hell you want to call it.
Yeah, 100%.
So
I mean, I was always, aside from sports, I was always, I was in bands.
Oh, okay.
Like, yeah, I played pretty much every instrument. You give me an instrument, I'll be able to figure out. I can't read music. I just used to write my own songs.
Okay.
And, you know, play like covers. So I was always in bands. We were playing shows. We had an absolute blast doing that. The fire department was just like this. I don't really know where it came from. Cause I remember my dad, when I was 17 years old, my dad had to come and sign the paperwork for me to join. And he gave me this stern talking to on the way there. And he was like, are you sure you want to do this? He's like, this is way different from you and your friends fucking around in the cafeteria. You know, I was always getting in trouble in school. And he's like, this is a men's organization. Like, you're going to be told what to do. And I'm like, yeah, no, this is what I want to do. And he thought I was crazy when I because there was no one in my immediate family that were firefighters. So it was just like this weird thing I wanted to do. And he was like, all right, if you want to do it, then go ahead.
Yeah. And so as that progresses, how long do you spend in that? Because you work for two different departments. How long do you spend with that first one?
First one, I was there for, I think, 11 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I moved and then transferred to my second department. And I was there for 5 years. And now I like to say I'm an unrestricted free agent because I moved again and, you know, I got married. So my wife and I were in the process now of trying to figure out where we're going to move to.
Oh, okay.
And wherever we land, I'm going to join the fire department there.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's been a year that I've been out, and it's been like I feel like a whole part of me is like gone, and the only thing keeping me sane right now is the podcast that we do, because I started it when I was, you know, still at the firehouse. So but 100% I'm going back. Yeah, there's no like, you know, this is I did my time type deal.
Yeah, you're gonna stay in that neck of the woods, New York-ish somewhere?
Yeah, we'll stay on Long Island.
Oh, so, okay. So literally just moving around.
Yeah.
Same general area.
Yeah, I was going to join the department where I am now, but just our timeline of when we want to kind of get out of here, I'm like, I don't want to give them like a couple of months and then bail. Yeah. But I am working on some other stuff right now for, you know, helping a department out that I can while I'm not living in that area. So we'll see
cool.
how that goes.
Yeah. Like as someone that's not from New York and hasn't even been there.
Gotta get you out here.
Yeah, I know. I've had many offers to come out, and I need to make it happen. I really want to at some point, but New Yorkers talking about New York and the boroughs and all the things, I couldn't be more confused. I don't know if it's just me being an idiot, but they're like Long Island this and Manhattan that, and I'm like, someone explained to me recently that a borough is a county, and so I was like, oh, okay, that helps me kind of frame this into reference. But I just have I live technically, I work in quote unquote a big city, but it's like it's so minuscule in comparison to like New York. So it's like I can't even grasp how things break down. Like the idea of you moving from Long Island to Long Island doesn't make any sense to me. That means like what down the road, right? It's like
it's so municipal here. You know, like Long Island is not a borough of the city. So you have the boroughs of the city. Obviously, you got Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, Bronx, Staten Island. Those are the 5 boroughs. Now, if you look at a map of Long Island, which looks like a fish, okay, the head of that fish is Brooklyn and Queens. And then after Queens, you have Nassau County. And then after Nassau County, you have Suffolk County, which is where I live. And when you get out to like the tails of Long Island, that's where like the Hamptons are, you know, out there. So, yeah, I can see why people get confused. And we also like the fire departments here, Nassau and Suffolk are all volunteer fire departments. You have some combo departments, but we have townships here, right? Which most fire departments around the country go by township. Within the townships, you have like hamlets or villages. Each hamlet and village has their own fire department. So that's where things get really confusing. And like all the hamlets and hamlets and villages have their own schools. So we don't go by like, you know, people be like, oh, I'm from blank township fire department. And it's like, you know, we don't run that way. Did you make me blurry?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I think you're like the Bigfoot. Like the Bigfoot, you know, the Bigfoot. I just had a conversation with one of the theories in Bigfoot is that the creature itself is blurry. That's why you can never get a clear picture of it. I mean, it's a flimsy theory, but it is a theory nonetheless. You're going to be blurry from here on out, I think.
Let's see if let's troubleshoot again.
We joked about this earlier. We were troubleshooting before we started. Hey, there it is. We were talking about troubleshooting live on the show, and people are really missing out on the gold that is troubleshooting. So let's keep talking about this, especially as your show is volunteer based, right? Like really focusing on that niche. How does the volunteer fire service work there in terms of like for sake of reference in Minnesota where I'm at, if you're a volunteer, there's very few, I guess I wouldn't say very few, but there's a whole different range of what volunteer means. Like there's a true volunteer, like you don't get paid anything. You do this and it's for the love of the game, or maybe 20 years. If you do 20 years there, you get like some sort of, you know, severance package or something. And then there's kind of like what also gets kind of lumped into that, which would be like paid on call, which is like you have a pager and you get paid when you go, but you don't get paid for standby or anything like that. And then there's like a part-time, which is they're getting paid to sit at the station and go on call. It's just the same way as a full-timer or a professional or whatever you want to call it. But they also have a different job. So they're kind of in that volunteer camp as well. How is the volunteer market work there on the East Coast?
That's the big conversation happening right now. So the way it currently works with Long Island is pretty much all of the fire departments here are 100% volunteer. Now we have something called LOSAP, which is the Length of Service Award Program. So you basically get almost like a pension some departments are different. Like some departments you can start getting a check at the age of 55. Some you start at 60, 61, 62, whatever it is. and you basically get like a monthly check from all your years of service as a volunteer. That's how it works currently. Now, there is a lot of conversation happening right now just because of the decline in volunteerism. How do we get people to stick around? How do we get people to join? And when I joined, they told me about LOSAP. I'm like, yeah, I don't give a shit. Like, I just want to go on the calls and I want to train. So that's just kind of like a thing, an old type of perk where it's like, yeah, you do this long enough, you'll get, a couple $100 every month, when you turn old. So
yeah.
that's, now they're throwing around the idea, like some of the stuff that you mentioned, the pay-per call, the, maybe like a stipend for standbys and whatnot, just to try and somehow supplement the issue of the declining volunteerism.
What do you theorize? I mean, this is probably the $1 billion question, but do you have any theories on why that we're seeing a downtick in fire service interest in general for whatever reason? Obviously, I think there's a ton of conversation to be had about that in general, but I think that the volunteer side is hurting even worse than the paid side in terms of like, if people won't do it to get paid, and most of the time a decent wage, why on earth would I do this job for free, right?
Yeah, it really is so interesting. Here, I would say the biggest problem we have here on Long Island is the fact that everything is so expensive. So, there are houses the size of sheds going for like 800,000, and the wages have not caught up. So, people are now working multiple jobs to try and make ends meet. You have kids that are, join the fire department, say when they were in like high school, that, they were still living with their parents, but now they're moving out of state because it's too expensive to live here. So there's that side of it. But on the other side of it too, and we talked about this on our show, is there also might be the chance that younger people are staying at their parents or living at their parents' house a lot longer than they used to. And that's something that I think we need to be aware of. Like, we need to keep those people around, if they're going to be hanging out here much longer. And the other part of it too, we put up a poll on our Instagram a while ago, asking people what they thought the biggest issue with the volunteer fire services, and overwhelmingly the number one thing they picked was leadership problems. And it's not just a volunteer problem, it's a career fire department problem. We see it all over the place, like these mass resignations going on, and then even just regular careers, regular business. If you're not treated well, you're going to leave. So I don't know. And again, this is like, people want us to talk about this all the time on our show, and we've beat it over the head. I think what the main issue is, especially when it comes to leadership, like, if you enjoy doing something, right, and you enjoy the people you do it with, you're going to keep doing that, right? So if there's any difference with that, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, or you don't enjoy the people that you're doing it with, you're going to stop doing that. And it's like any hobby that you have, some people like golf, some people like fishing, some people are go to the gym all the time. They like doing that, and that stuff costs them money, and sure, you could look at the volunteer fire services. Well, I could have a second job and not do this, and that's basically costing me money. But if you like doing it and you're treated well, you're going to continue doing it. And I think that's a major issue that we're having. And then the recruiting side of it as well, the younger generation, finding somebody who's really into being a firefighter or into training and going on calls is almost like finding a needle in a haystack nowadays. It's very rare, but there are some kids that come in that are really, really into it. They become great firemen. So I don't know. I think it's a mixture of a bunch of different things. And, I'm a big believer that things are cyclical. And, Kevin, the other host of the Volley House podcast, I mean, he said that this has been something that's been talked about ever since he joined back in I think he joined in like the 70s or 80s, something like that. He said they've been talking about that forever. But truth be told, I think the bigger problem, or not problem, what we have to look at is if houses were actually just burning to the ground and the fire department was just not showing up, then we would have a very serious problem. But the trucks are still getting out for the most part. Obviously here and there, sometimes there's no response or whatever, but here we're trying to do everything we can to make sure that we're getting the best level of service to the community.
Mm-hmm. When you have people, if you hear the rumblings of complaints of leadership or administrative complaints, are there any specific things they seem to key in on? Is it just like an overall, I'm not feeling supported in my working environment, I'm not enjoying myself here, or is it like they are failing me in X way?
Yeah, it's a mixture of both. Some people just like, we'll put it out on our social media. What do you guys want us to talk about? And there's big leadership problems. Okay, well, what about them? Then we have some people that will give us, very specific ideas on what exactly the problem is. And what it comes down to really is ego and bad ego. Because if you look up the definition of ego, it's neutral. It doesn't say that it's bad. Everybody has an ego. The whole idea of ego is to protect our self-esteem. It's something that's programmed into us. Now, when you have somebody that is insecure, that gets into a leadership position, that's where the bad ego starts to come out, because now they have power, and I say this all the time. There's so much good information out there about being a good leader. We've had conversations with some of the greatest leaders in the fire service on our show. And the big problem is, if you're somebody that is reading books on leadership or you're watching podcasts and trying to better yourself, that's great. But the bad leaders are not doing that. They're not educating themselves on being good leaders. So, yeah, I think there's a multitude of different issues there.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is you're right on the nose there, which is the people that need the books aren't the ones reading the books, and the people that could probably get by without the book are the ones that are trying to become better and consume the information. And it's such a the other thing that I notice when I look at administration, and I've worked for 3 departments, and different administrations come and go, and new chief and old chief and all the things, but it's like the smaller the issues the chiefs take issue with is directly proportional to the trust that the ground level firefighters have in them and their overall leadership ability. Because I genuinely just to my core believe this, that like when you're someone that's completely consumed with enforcing a uniform rule, it's because that's the only thing you know about. Like if you actually were thinking about fireground tactics and like deployment models or whatever the thing that actually matters, like how faded your pants are would be the last thing we care about, right?
Right.
Well, hey gang. Well, I appreciate you listening to the episode. If you could do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment, give it a rating. If you rate it, that's like super good for me, I've heard. I appreciate it. Follow the show on social media, share the show whenever you can. It makes such a big difference. I love you all. Bye. This podcast is brought to you in part by Hikes Boots. You can tell a lot about a brand by the way they choose to advertise, and Hikes didn't ask me to say anything specific. They sent me 2 pairs of boots, structural fire boots, the Fire Eagle Air and the Fire Eagle Extreme, and they're awesome. I'll tell you, literally yesterday, I went on like a 2-hour long gas run, and someone struck a gas pipe, and I stood around the whole time, honestly doing not much, and I was uncomfortable. My back hurt and my pack was uncomfortable, but what didn't hurt? my feet. I felt like I was walking on clouds. So thanks, Hikes, for that. If you want any more information about it, check it out at hikesusa.com. That's HAIXUSA.com, or check the show notes for the direct link. Rigaku. Yeah, today's episode is also brought to you by Rigaku Analytical Devices, who are the folks that have been perfecting the 1064 nanometer Ramen unit for longer than a lot of us have even been doing hazmat. And, they just launched their 4th generation handheld analyzer, the Icon X, and it's built specifically for real world hazmat teams. It does the things that other units struggle with. We're talking about dirty powders, mixed materials, dyes, colors, all the things that make other instruments just so angry. And the 1064 nanometer laser means reduced fluorescence, so you get fast, reliable chemical ID in under a minute without staring at a blank screen wondering what you did wrong. And this new platform isn't just an upgrade, it's a whole new toolbox. It supports new accessories, including standoff analysis, so you can get answers without getting too close. If you want an analyzer that's evolving right alongside the hazmat world, check out Rigaku's newest ramen at rigakuanalytical.com, or check the show notes. Hey, back to the show. Bye-bye.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest problems with leadership is the one size fits all type thing. Mm-hmm. When you have certain policies in place that you enforce across the board, there's a lot of different personalities in the fire service, and you have people that, might fuck up once, but they're really good firefighters. And you might have some douchebag that just doesn't do anything. He's not providing anything good for the membership there. He's never on calls or anything like that. And you're giving them the same treatment. I'm a big proponent of policing or taking things on a case by case basis. And, even like when I was in a leadership position, I was young, like really young to be an officer. I became a lieutenant at 21 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I'd only had 4 years of firefighting experience. And, granted, I get voted into the position, and I was supposed to do 3 years as a second lieutenant, 3 years as a first lieutenant, and then go to captain. I wound up in the captain seat 3 years later. So I'm 24 years old as a captain. And part of me was like, okay, there are guys in my company that have way more time than I do, like in the fire service, than I am alive. So I didn't want to be like, I was still a young kid and I was always joking around and stuff like that. So, these guys put me into a very serious position. And the first thing I thought of, I said, okay, I need to get good with the senior guys and keep kind of the same thing I had going with the younger guys, because I had a great crew. And I'll say, I don't know if I could take credit for, the success that, I had while I was in the officer's position. I had so many good people that I worked with that were into it. And I trusted them, they trusted me, and we just kind of kept things moving that way. And I think for new leaders, you got to go find mentors. Any administrative decisions I would have to make, I would always run by some of the older guys in my company that were ex-chiefs or ex-captains. When I was on running a scene, if I was OIC, I would always grab an ex-chief or an ex-captain and just have them sit there, be an extra pair of ears and eyes for me. Mm-hmm. Because I wanted to make sure I was doing it properly. And I think some people miss the boat on that. They just get the badge and they're like, okay, well, I'm the leader now. And I've seen both sides. I've had shitty leaders that I've been under, and then I've had like absolute legends as chief officers or captains. And, you just have to pick and choose what you don't want to be and what you want to be, like which one of those people you want to follow.
Yeah, and I think that everyone that's worked in the fire service, or even any team environment where you are dependent on a quality culture and someone to guide that culture and accomplish tasks, like they all have seen a good example and a bad example. It just is bizarre to me when, it seems like everyone can recognize what's good and what's bad, but still you still have people that like choose the dark side, for lack of a better term, right? It's like, I don't get it. Like everyone can look back from a 10,000 foot view and go, oh, wow, that person's awesome. And this person's not doing so great. And then you still have this divergence that are like, well, I'm going to do exactly what they're doing, because even though it's horrible, right? I don't know why, but there is a contingent.
I think, so Kevin and I, we're in the process of writing a couple of books right now. And one of the things that I had wrote about in a book that we'll put out probably later on in the year about leadership in the volunteer fire service. Because ultimately, if you get in trouble in the volunteer fire service, it has zero repercussions to your personal life. Mm-hmm. Or if you piss people off in the volunteer fire service, they could just stop showing up, mm-hmm. and you can't do anything about it. So one of the things that I've seen is officers or chiefs that they're trying to do the right thing, and you can't make everyone happy. Right. And I've said this before, you can't make everyone happy, but you should absolutely try. And what I mean by that is you're going to have people that are on board with everything that you want to do as a leader. And then you're going to have people that aren't on board. And now the first thing is, do they understand why you are trying to do X, Y, Z? That's the first thing. Are you talking to these people and giving them your time as an officer to explain to them why you made this decision? The second part of it is you're going to have people that are going to talk shit behind your back to other members. And a big problem that I feel with culture is who's at the firehouse all the time. It's the probies. It's the young guys that want to go on calls. They're just hanging out, waiting to go on the truck. But then you have these toxic people that come down there and they just start chirping. And the probies and the young guys are the most impressionable people in the firehouse. And they start picking up this toxic energy. Now they don't know how to feel about the leader. And one of the things I see is leaders tend to ignore the toxic people because they're like, this guy's an asshole. Like, he's just going to fight me on everything, blah, blah, blah. That's the wrong approach. You have to, if you know somebody has a problem, talk to them one-on-one. Like, one-on-one conversations go so much further than like a group setting. And you let them just say, hey, this is an open conversation. I want to hear what your problems are, and I'm not going to yell at you. I'm going to hear you, and I will explain to you our outlook on this. And if there's any way that I can try and make something better for you, I will. And then the toxic people, usually two different types of problems. Either they feel like they're not heard, or they're just lost. And the people that aren't heard, maybe something happened to them, throughout their firefighting career that they're disgruntled about. And now everyone that's got a shield is the enemy. So those people you just want to hear out. Let them give you suggestions. You don't have to implement them, but hear them out. And listen, might be something good that you can implement. For the people that feel lost, give them something to do. Let them run a drill, put them in charge of some sort of committee. Give them something that will make them feel empowered. That's what you have to do as a leader, is empower, the people that you're trying to lead. And I feel like that's some of the things that I've seen that people miss the boat on.
Mm-hmm. So to expand on that a little bit more, you have your disgruntled people. I totally agree with the idea that, you can't work around them. You have to go through the problem, right? You have to address it and move through it. How do we handle, so we'll probably have different perspectives. Me coming from the career side, you come from the volunteer. You're totally right with the idea that the stakes are different. The repercussions are different. It's totally a different environment. But when that person pushes back and you say, hey man, what's your problem? Why do we have this issue right now? Or what's your gripe? and then they just basically say like, you know, for lack of a better phrase, it's like, I hate you. You're bad at your job. I'm smarter than you. You know, because there's that guy who's like, it doesn't matter how good you are at your job. They think they're better, and they're angry that you would be in charge of them. Right.
Yeah.
And so from the volunteer perspective, how do you deal with that person without disenfranchising them to the point that you lose a member on your department because it's easy to come down with the hammer and say, actually, no, you suck. You're stupid. You know, you don't know what you're talking about. But then more than likely in that environment, you're probably just like, oh, that guy is done, right? You'll never get him back. Once you go head to head and he loses, like how do you soft play that and keep him on the line, but at the same time, not necessarily let him win because he shouldn't?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say I've had run-ins with people before, even like I was explaining to you before, being a young officer. There are just some people out there that no matter what you do, they're going to just give you shit for something. I'll give you a perfect example. We were on the Long Island Expressway, major roadway, at a car accident, and it was a vehicle fire. And we put out the fire, and now there's hose all over the place. We got to get that up quick because we have to open up all the lanes on the expressway. And obviously, it takes a couple people to pack up hose. So I had walked into one of the rigs, and there's a couple guys sitting there. I said, I'm like, you guys give us a hand with packing up the hose. They give me the sigh, and I just hop off, go back there. Maybe like 2 more guys came out, and I was pissed. So I went up there. I'm like, get off the truck, help us pack this hose. And one of the guys like, oh, this fucking officer thing, went to your head, huh? And I was pissed about that. I was like, dude, like, this is just a common courtesy that we do in the fire service. We help pack up hose. And this guy was one of my friends. And I was on the ride back to the firehouse. I was heated because I'm like he's telling me that I'm the officer thing's getting to my head, blah, blah, blah. And again, first thing I did was found one of the senior guys that I trusted and spoke to him, and he just kind of laughed. He's like, look, some people are just going to, give you a tough time, and, you don't want to escalate it. You don't want to go after them and be like, no, you're an asshole, blah, blah, blah. But what I did was, I think it was a few days later, I kind of pulled him aside. I'm like, dude, why are we giving me so much shit? Like, that's just what we do. And it was one-on-one, just me and him. Mm-hmm. And he just said to me, like, dude, like, honestly, I was tired. I was being a dick, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And we kind of figured it out that way. And I think there's you get that side of it where you get somebody on a one-on-one conversation that they have a problem with you. You can most of the time talk that out, mm-hmm. Let them give you feedback. That's what you want as a leader, give you feedback. And if it's dumb feedback where it's this person's just an idiot and they're just saying shit because that's how they are as a person, there's 2 ways to handle that. First is there's probably somebody in your firehouse that they respect very much. Go talk to that person and let them know the issue that you're having with them and see if they can mitigate that problem. That's the first step. The second part of it is you might have this person that you have this conversation and they're just being ridiculous about things, but you appease them. And this is one thing that I said on our show. People hate appeasing other people. Well, if he's being a dick, why should I, kowtow to him? It's not that you're doing that. You have an entire organization or an entire company of guys that you need to be concerned about. And if you're going to keep bumping heads with this one dude, it's going to start stirring the pot for the rest of your company or the rest of your department. So as long as you keep that one guy at bay, and what I mean by that is you appease him by, if he's saying that, I'm just trying to think of an example. Why do we have to wear our reflective vests on the road or whatever? Mm-hmm. And he gives you, a problem about that. You can just kind of almost jokingly, and this is a completely made up example, and it's probably a terrible example of what I'm trying to say, but like this guy's refusing to wear his reflective vest, and and you're the officer and this is the main problem, you know, jokingly throw a vest on him when he's on the street. You know what I mean? Put it on, you know?
Yeah.
You want to almost joke with them and not be so serious all the time, because that's what kind of drives people away. So I think that's probably the best way to handle those people, for sure. The one-on-one conversation. And I think anything beyond that, anything beyond a person just having an issue, are they being insubordinate? You know, is this conduct unbecoming? Are they not listening to orders that you're giving them in the fireground? That's a whole nother issue. You know, you got to be documenting that stuff, putting it into a file, and gets to a point, are they going to be disciplined for this, or, you know, potentially tossed out of the department? Or is this something you can mitigate as a leader? And I think those are probably the best ways to handle those types of people.
Yeah, especially in the fire service, there's a lot of like big personalities, a lot of like quote unquote tough guys, want to seem manly, don't want to like roll over. So you get in those conflicts where somebody's mad at somebody. There's almost an element of like, I guess the word might be performative. It's like, I'm not going to back down, and I'm going to make sure that everyone sees me not back down because I'm so tough. And all of a sudden you deal with them on the side and they're like, oh yeah, sorry, dude, I was being a dick, you know? It's like, it's like it totally de-escalates. It pulls the air out of the room when all of a sudden they have to be real. Cause like, there's this like, there's so much bravado when you're in public, and it's like, I want to, you know, prove that I'm strong and tough and, you know, not going to back down or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And I think it has the opposite effect. You know, anytime I've seen a public fight in the firehouse or argument or something like that, usually the most macho guy that's, you know, really trying to stick his case, when he leaves the room, everyone's like, he's a dick.
Yeah.
And it couldn't be more true. And I had when I was an officer, there was another officer of a different company, and we had engine and truck out of headquarters, my first department. And me and this officer, we were good friends, and we both became lieutenants at the same time. And there was always this kind of rivalry between engine and truck, which is standard in the fire service. But it got to the point where call came in, and I would say have like 3 guys on the engine. We needed a 4th. And he would make his guys go on the truck. Meanwhile, we needed 1 more. And him and I really started bumping heads about it and got into like a big fight. And then, you know, my one friend was like, dude, you guys have to talk this out, because engine and truck guys, the young guys, were hanging out down at the firehouse. And now things were getting awkward with them because of us 2 officers. So we sat down and realized, like, all right, we're both kind of being idiots here. And we were like, we're out of headquarters, right? We have 2 substations in our district too. Like, why are we competing against each other? Why don't we compete against the substations? And we kind of talked it out, and it became like this funny thing at the end where it was like, why don't we become like this dominant headquarters, you know, where we're all just getting the rigs out and beating out the substations. And we got the guys all fired up, you know, like all the young guys, like, okay, now they're back, and we work things out. And it's the one-on-one conversations will go so far. And yeah, you might not want to be the guy that's going to be the first one to apologize or say that I'm wrong. But when you do that, you gain so much more respect from all the other people that you have to worry about. And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring, like, as I kind of think over what you were saying, it's like, I don't know if I can ever remember in my whatever decade in the fire service a fight happening and then people being like, that guy's cool, or like, that was, you know, it's everyone's like, that guy sucks. Like, you know,
right.
Like, you know, it's like, it's so, I mean, maybe if I rack my brain, I can think of like some like, oh, that was sweet when whoever blew up on whoever else or whatever. But ultimately, it's like nobody actually thinks it's cool. I mean, very, 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 very rarely. It's always like, man, why is that guy such a jerk? That's so stupid.
Yeah, and it
like,
makes things awkward.
Oh, it's brutally.
When you're sitting in the room, 2 guys are going at it.
I've been sitting at the kitchen table, like people are going at it. Don't get me wrong. There's no place I would rather be in that moment. Like it's like full bore popcorn, like, oh mom, it's like, this is the best. But you walk away and you're like, my opinion of both those people or that group is worse than it was. Like, let's just like have a conversation like adults here. My God.
Yeah. No, 100%.
So I do have a question. So I don't know if you know this, and maybe the listeners don't know this either, but like, so I worked paid on call, then I worked part-time. Now I work career, right? So I worked the gamut through the different models of the fire service. And I remember I was an officer on my part-time department. And I remember having these conversations all too often where people would push back in training and, preparedness, because they would say, well, I mean, I'm actually like, a banker. I'm not even really a fireman, or whatever this thing. They felt as though the expectation for their response, it was warranted for it to be, less, because it's. I mean, I actually work for the gas company. I don't, whatever the thing is, right? And I would always slam them, like, hey, man, mom on the phone that's calling because her house is on fire doesn't care what you do for your day job. They're expecting a fully functional fire. They don't know about the response model, whether or not you're getting paid. They don't know anything. They're saying, I'm calling 911. I need my problem solved. Please come and solve it. And there's no grace. There's no like, oh, I mean, they made a whole mess of the hose and they couldn't, put the fire out. But I mean, after all, they aren't real full-time firefighter, whatever the thing is, right? It's like, I hate that thought process. It makes me so angry. Is that a thing that you've had? It seems like the East Coast volunteer culture is much better. There's a lot more pride in it. Not to say there's not pride in Minnesota, but they're on multiple departments, that through line, which is like, we don't have to be tip top because the expectation is so much lower for us. And in all reality, it's not. Nobody thinks that, not the public at least. So is that a thing you have to contend with out east too, or not really? Or not the same?
Yes and no. And I think when you look at NFPA, there are different standards for career firefighters compared to volunteer firefighters, which, we've talked about on our show before that. And I agree with what you're saying, that everybody should be trained to the gills. And I think what's different with us, especially here on Long Island and probably some of the volunteer houses outside of the city, we have a huge FDNY influence out here. Like, I don't know what the percentage is, and I'd be very curious to figure out what it is, but the percentage of volunteer firefighters on Long Island that are also members of the FDNY, you have some, tip-top people. Like, we had Tom Richardson on our show. He was our first guest in the Volley House podcast. He was the chief of the FDNY and was also a 2-time chief of his volunteer department here on Long Island. Very well respected chief. And then just some of the, like, I always talk about my town, Hauppauge was where I grew up. That was the first apartment I was in. Didn't really burn all that much. It's a middle class town. But the 2 towns beneath us were always burning like crazy. And we'd go to mutual aid calls all the time. And I had, like, we would have these FDNY guys, lieutenants or captains in squad companies or, rescue companies that would be with me on the rig. And it was a walk in the park for them. And they would, like, you could follow these dudes into a fire. And I was this one guy, Joe Peltrani, he would give classes in a real fire. Like, we'd be there and we'd be like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he's like, relax. Like, we got it, blah, blah, blah. So I think the level of training or the expectations, a lot of that influence comes from FDNY and people that really know what they're doing. And for the people that push back, and, we've heard this before, Kevin has mentioned it where, somebody was like, why do we keep going over the pack maneuvers? We never use them. And it's like, well, that's a really dumb thing to say, because the whole idea of learning that and knowing it like the back of your hand is in the case that you do need to know that. And fires are changing. They're burning a lot faster and a lot hotter today. And if we're not prepared, you're going to get hurt or you're going to get killed. And that would really suck for that to happen as a volunteer. You know, you're not getting paid for what you're doing. And I would say for the people that maybe don't have what we have out here, train. If you have a drill night, just have the rest of the guys train on what you're training on. And the one guy that wants to sit out because he doesn't think that he needs to do that, he's going to feel like an idiot when he's just sitting there watching everyone not complain and do what they're supposed to do. And eventually we'll follow suit, or we'll be like, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah. And, you know, in all reality, it would be unreasonable to expect the same outcome from a volunteer company as someone that's full-time job. The only thing that they're expected to be great at in their whole life is this thing. Like, I understand that. It's just that, like, you also have to look at the perspective of the citizen that's making the 911 call. Like, they don't know anything about who you are and why you're on the truck and the capacity you're on. Like, so that was always my motivating factor when I would talk to my crews, which is like, hey man, they don't know. They just think you're a firefighter. They think it's the same thing as whether they called it in New York City or St. Paul or wherever the hell you're working, right?
Right.
They called 911, send help, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of the other part of it too is we talk to departments from all over the country, and a lot of them, like, we have huge budgets out here on Long Island. So we have like a lot of state-of-the-art equipment. You know, we can buy new fire trucks, you know, which are, the prices are astronomical. And then we talk to other departments out there that they're just getting hand-me-downs from other departments, like 20-year-old equipment that has been in fires. And granted, they might not be responding to the amount of calls that say like we are out here. I mean, Long Island is extremely populated. So, you know, we have 180 something fire departments here. And most of them are responding to at least 1,000 calls a year. And like my first department, we were doing 1,000 calls a year, fire only. And my last department, 5,000 calls a year. And this is a department with 200 volunteers, or just about 200 volunteers, handling 5,000 calls a year in like a 30-something square mile area. So it's extremely busy. But, you know, some of these other departments out there, they're doing 100 square miles and they're running 500 calls a year. So we talk about it all the time. Like, there needs to be more of an investment in the fire service. Kevin says it all the time. These departments should have the money for training. They should have the equipment to do the job, because like you said, somebody calls 911, they expect a fire truck to be there within a few minutes with guys that know what they're doing. And unfortunately, sometimes that's not the case.
So I want to transition to talking about your decision to start Volley House and all of that. So at a certain point, so I'll preference it with this, right? So you're doing all this stuff, and at some point you go, podcast, right? Why?
So we started Volley House podcast in January of 2025. And at the time I was doing some work with Firewire. So there's the Firewire app, and started as NYC Firewire. And we were trying to get kind of build it into a media company. And we had partnered with a podcast, and we were like, all right, we need another podcast on here just to generate content. And as kind of like shitty as that sounds to say, like, that was the idea. So me and Phil, who was another partner, we were like, let's start a podcast for the volunteers, because I didn't know of any that were out there. And I just came up with the name Volley House Podcast. And I had run into Kevin Yos, who was actually one of my instructors when I was taking Firefighter 1. And we were looking for somebody who had a lot of experience and who also had a sense of humor and, you know, can talk. So we recruited Kevin, and Kevin was like, yeah, let's do it. And we started this podcast. We had no idea really like where it was going to go or how it was going to go, if people were going to think we're idiots. And it's weird to start a podcast. Like, it's like, all right, like I'm going to be on camera and I'm going to be talking and I have to kind of know what I'm doing here. But I have learned so much about the fire service just from having this podcast. And it changed my whole perspective on the fire service in general. You know, Kevin would break our chops all the time because he'd be like, oh, you know, I was talking to so-and-so and we're like, who's that? He's like, you don't know, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I loved firefighting, but I was never really Buffy, you know, like I didn't know all the big names in the fire service and stuff like that really until I started getting into this podcast. And we started having guests on. And I mean, some legends. I mean, like I said, we had Tom Richardson on, Paul Hashagen was on our show. And just hearing their stories. And I remember like, I was like kicking myself. I'm like, I wish I knew more about this type of stuff. Like, I wish I'd picked up that book sitting on the kitchen table and read through it a little bit more. And I hope that anybody that listens to this will take the time to do that, because the fire service has gone through so many ebbs and flows. And I think it's important to know history and, you know about certain fires and why we do certain things because of certain fires we went to. And it made me fall in love with it more. And just even sitting there talking to Kevin, I mean, Kevin's a wealth of knowledge, and I can bring up any topic, and just hearing him talk about it, I've learned so much. The guests that we've had on, I've learned so much, and it turned into just, okay, this is just going to be like a content machine for, you know, this company that wound up not even working out. And we kept the podcast going because we had so many people, so many volunteers from around the country and from even around the world. Like, we get people sending submissions from Australia, and I had no clue that there were volunteer firefighters in Australia. And they're having the same kind of issues or same problems that we are. And it turned into more of, okay, like what we're talking about, people have been reaching out and saying, hey, this has really helped. I implemented this with my department and it works. So if we can use this podcast and this message to better the fire service so that these people can better serve their communities, then I'm 100% in. And that's where I stand with it today. And then obviously we had mentioned Command Media. You know, I had met Bobby Salveson and Mike Monaco, and we were like, there's so much good information out there, you know, with podcasts, but it's so scattered. So we're like, why don't we create Command Media and bring these podcasts together so that a person could just come here and they can pick and choose what they want to listen to. And we'll put everyone's content out there just to make sure it gets in front of everybody. And yeah, I mean, that's where we're at now. And then obviously I met you through them, and you and I are the same age. And, you know,
we're the young bucks of the
we're
empire.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's why the idea for the show Out of Service came out, because, you know, you look at some of the other guys in Command Media, they're retired, you know, full of knowledge. And that's what people really long for. But at the same time, people aren't just firefighters 100% of the time. There's other stuff out there, you know, their regular lives or their hobbies or just the regular banter that, you know, legacy media kind of keeps, you know, let's not let that escape. But Command Media is going to be like, no, this is what people really talk about. And obviously after meeting you and we had a few conversations, I was like, me and Jay get along.
Yeah.
You know, we can do something fun. Yeah, for sure.
And so as we start to kind of look to wrap up here, I want to like talk to me about, like, you've already broken down what you're hoping Command Media to be, but like, what's the future cast? Like, what do you see it becoming?
I see Command Media becoming a platform for existing shows, which we've already brought on some really good existing podcasts. And then also for people out there that are very knowledgeable, that go out and train or talk to different fire departments, whatnot, that have always thought about starting a podcast, but never knew how to do that. Mm-hmm. And that's also something that we're working on with a few other shows now is, hey, you're very smart and you do a very good job at what you do. We're going to build a show for you. That way you can put it out to a bigger audience. And then aside from that, there's a training aspect of it where people can come on and, go to the website and take a look and say, hey, we need hazmat training or leadership training or training on X, Y, and Z, and can find the different options with all the different people on this platform. And it's just another door to that side of things. And then the camaraderie aspect of it, which is within Command Media. Yes, we'll have all these different podcasts, but we're also going to be bringing podcast hosts together for certain segments within Command Media that will have some humorous aspects to it, or just, really building personas for each person that's a part of Command Media, and having it be an outlet for people to either learn more about the fire service or something specific, or be able to just kind of take a break from the fire service and watch something entertaining that's just happens to also be firefighters or first responders. And, we'll eventually look to add, I would love like a police podcast, something of that nature. Like, my father-in-law, he was undercover narcotics.
Cool.
And some of the stories he tells me, like, I'm on the edge of my seat, and I was like, this has got to be a show. Like, people love that type of shit. Mm-hmm. So that's really what it's going to be. And basically just a newer community for firefighters that's not so dry, so to speak. Not so techie. It's going to be everything that the firehouse actually is.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, man. Well, before I let you go, I do want to give you an opportunity to tell people where to find Volley House and all the Command Media stuff. But also, I know you do a lot of work procuring and donating money to volunteer firehouses and stuff like that. So talk about like that program. I know you sell shirts on the website, stuff like that. Tell me about that, and then tell people where they can find more information about Volley House.
Yeah, sure. That whole thing started with the t-shirts because we had spoken to a few departments that really just had no money for anything. They had no access to training academies. They had no access to live burns, no access to equipment, or they needed, say, like repairs to their rigs. And we don't have that problem here. We have everything we need. And again, back to our part of our conversation before was like, that's a serious problem. Like, these people are volunteering their time to try and help somebody in their community that's having the worst day of their life, and they don't have the means to do it. And on top of that, they're not trained to do it. Mm-hmm. And that kind of put it in our heads, like, we got to help these people as best we can, because we would hate to see somebody get hurt or killed. And the whole idea was the Firehouse of the Week, where we put it out there, like, if your department is hurting for money, they do all sorts of things to get money, fundraisers, whether it's walking in a busy intersection with the boot for people to put money in, or doing like a chicken dinner at the firehouse. This whole idea was, hey, we can just take your logo and put it on a t-shirt, put it on our website, and blast it out there. You don't have to mass order t-shirts. You don't have to worry about shipping or anything like that. At the end of the month from when you started, we're simply just going to whatever money came in, any of the net proceeds that came in, we're just going to write out a check and send it to your department. And whether it's $1,000, whether it's $10, we'll get it to you. Maybe at the very least you can buy the guys a dinner at the firehouse just to get everyone together, and just kind of help build up that camaraderie and have some conversation. So we've had a lot of departments that got involved with that, and our hope is that we can grow it and, get more sales and really help these departments out. And we've also been talking to a lot of organizations out there that will help departments with whether it's grants, for grant writing, or organizations like the Terry Farrell Foundation. They get equipment to people. The Joey D Foundation that Kevin runs, they provide bailout harnesses for departments in need. And the big thing is, what we've realized is so many people don't know about some of these grants and funds that are available to them. And we're trying to get that out as much as possible so that people know, hey, really all you need to do is make a phone call and you can get the stuff that you need. So we're going to be kind of enhancing that with Command Media, because the idea is taking everyone's audiences, all these shows' audiences, and meshing them together, and then being able to really push this information out to help these departments. And as far as the Volley House podcast, we're on all social medias, just at Volley House Podcast. That's VOLLY. For some reason, I don't know if it was my fuck up spelling it, but people spell it VOLLEY all the time.
It's like volleyball.
And like volleyball. And that's not how it's spelled. So it's at Volley House Podcast, VOLLY. Our full episodes are on YouTube and Spotify, and our social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We have all reels that we put out, and we put out information on that as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And to you could always send us a DM on anything. We're pretty good with answering. Or if you have any like specific questions, you can email info@Volley House Podcast. And we're having fun with it, and I'm looking forward to our show as well. We're going to be the first show that advertises cigarettes. I decided.
Heck
We're
yeah.
going to bring back cigarette advertising.
Hell yeah.
Even though I don't smoke.
I'm going to have to be smoking them, and I don't know if my wife's going to love that in the house, but that's okay.
Yeah, the fire alarm going off.
Yeah. We'll have to edit it out, but yeah. So out of service, I think we're shooting for probably very late May, very early June launch of out of service. Tyler, thanks, dude. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. This was great.
I'm sure we'll talk in between, but next time we talk on record will be for the out of service podcast. I appreciate it.
Hell yeah. No, I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Awesome, dude. Thanks for joining me.
Of course.